Material Radio Reading Service, a private not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, or questions. And stay with us. Reading Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, July 23rd. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont, and our weather looks to continue being lovely. Most sunny and pleasant today, a high of 75. Mainly clear tonight, a low of 56. Tomorrow, sunny with a high of 81. Saturday, a cloud and sun mix and a high of 83. Sunday, clouds and sun, maybe a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, a high of 79. Monday, right now, looks mostly cloudy and humid with a high of 80. Nationally, the high was in Dallas, Texas, 106, and the low was in Hayward, Wisconsin, 39. And our sunrise this morning was at 5:58, and sunset tonight at 8:46. And our weather trivia. How many thunderstorms rumble across the U.S. each day? Approximately 100,000. And they keep rumbling along. And our front page news. What to know about the crisis gripping the city school board. And this is written by Ben Tujimoto, who is a news staff reporter. June and July are typically quiet for education news, with teachers, administrators, students, and parents eager for summer break after at least 180 days of learning. Instead, it's been one of significant development after another, the impact of which has local leaders claiming the school board has lost the community's confidence and that district leadership has become embroiled in scandal instead of meaningfully improving students' academic achievements. Here are 5 key takeaways from the last 2 months. Legal filing alleges sexual misconduct by former Buffalo School superintendent and board member. Buffalo Schools administrator says her dignity is worth defending in legal filing accusing Pasquale Mubenga Mookie Hawkins of misconduct. Buffalo School Superintendent Pasquale Mubenga, about 2 months removed from unveiling a 5-year strategic plan for the district, resigned unexpectedly July 13th. 3 days later, attorneys for District Administrator Antoinette Amos filed a legal notice of claim accusing Mubenga of more than 18 instances of sexual harassment and abuse of authority, including allegations the superintendent displayed a box of condoms to Amos at his house, forced her hand onto his genitals, and struck her buttocks in his conference room at City Hall. Mubenga, who received no severance or buyout, has not been able to be reached for comment since notice of claim was filed. The legal notice also accused Louis Mookie Hawkins, a school board member, of harassing, threatening, and retaliatory conduct, although school board vice president Adriana Zulik, the day after the filing, called for Hawkins to resign. The accused board member said he would not resign, that he looks forward for the truth to come out. Amos also emphasized the school board and district officials did not implement any internal protective measures for her after she filed complaints to the district's Human Resource Department. Amos legal filing against Buffalo Schools and School Board is a separate endeavor from an independent investigation the board commissioned officially on June 26th by hiring the Buffalo law firm Hodgson Russ to look into multiple allegations of sexual harassment by Hawkins against employees of the school district. In the legal notice, Amos's attorneys indicated she is among the complainants in that investigation. Buffalo School Board President Kathy Evans Brown said on July 20th that an update is expected from Hodgson Russ in at least a week, and she said Jeffrey Swiatek, the lead investigating attorney, would determine how the results of the investigations were released. The full nature of the complaints against Hawkins in this investigation has not been made clear publicly, including the number of complainants and the specific accusations. Before the filing of the notice of claim against Mubenga and Hawkins, as well as the separate investigation into the latter, public distrust had already begun to grow toward the school board. An internal thread of emails shared with the Buffalo News June 12th traced an original correspondence between the board's leadership team of Evans Brown, Janita Everhart, and Adriana Zulik, which alerted the full board to an allegation made against a school board member that came to leaders' attention on June 2nd. In the ensuing days, the leaders did not share the name of the accused board member nor the nature of the accusations, instead asking the board to complete a sexual harassment training. Board members Larry Scott and Cindy McKeon became increasingly vocal about what they believed to be a lack of transparency among the leadership team and lack of urgency with which the board acknowledged the accusations publicly and charted a response. Despite an attempt by Zulik to call for a special meeting June 10th and spur the other leaders to act quickly, the board ultimately said at the end of its scheduled board meeting June 17th that it chose an unnamed law firm to investigate. The board was not clear in how and when they decided upon a law firm. 9 days later, Evans Brown confirmed the firm was Hodgson Russ. 2 days after the announcement of the law firm, McKeon submitted her resignation to Mubenga, pointing to the board's internal dysfunction, her lack of trust in its decision-making, and describing in a TV interview a culture of punishment within the board. Everhart on Monday told reporters that school board leadership, upon learning of allegations against Hawkins, spoke with two attorneys who advised them to share full details with the entirety of the board. Her conversations with the state education department, however, indicated that only the leadership team would be privy to the complaints. Local attorney Barry Covert, who is not involved in the case, provided an outside perspective of board leadership's response to allegations. He said he believed the board's choice of confidentiality over transparency was a common tactic and was the smart approach to allow claimants to feel protected. If you don't maintain confidentiality, the attorney said, what we've learned is that complainants just won't come forward. The legal filing against the district and board, the Hodgson Russ investigation against Hawkins, and McKeon's description for why she resigned have elicited strong responses from local and state leaders, most of whom urged some level of intervention by the state education department. The school board did not heed recommendations by Buffalo Teachers Federation President Rich Nigro, Assembly Member Jonathan Rivera, and Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan to postpone filing McKeon's empty seat due to the notice of claim and general lack of confidence in the board's recent actions. Ryan and Rivera were recently critical of Mubenga's resolution to abandon a multi-year project to move high-performing Leonardo da Vinci High School to SUNY Buffalo State University's campus. The resolution was tabled last week. Evans-Brown said Monday that she believes Nigro statements are a negotiating tactic. The school district and teachers union are bargaining for a new contract, while the board felt it was their responsibility and right to select a replacement board member within 30 days before the authority shifted to Ryan on July 24th. The issue quickly came to head Monday afternoon when 3 board members, Scott Zulik and Eric Bowen, abstained from a vote to appoint McKeon's replacement, Roscoe Henderson III, after learning of a memo from the State Education Department Commissioner Betty Rosa to Evans-Brown that recommended the board not fill the seat. Ferry District Representative Stefan Wright on Tuesday was the first of the 5 board members who approved the new board member's appointment to explain why the board took the action despite outside forces recommending against it. Regarding the commissioner's letter, I understood it as recommending that the board consider leaving the seat vacant, Wright wrote on Facebook. My understanding was that it was advisory rather than a directive. I also remain mindful of the statutory timeline for filling the vacancy. As an elected board member, I believed it was my responsibility to exercise my judgment and cast my vote accordingly. In a statement Tuesday evening, Evans-Brown said, "At no time did the board act with the intent to disregard or defy the Commissioner of Education. Rather, we acted in good faith, consistent with our legal responsibilities, our commitment to transparency, and our obligation to ensure that every district is represented by a full complement of elected leadership."
Iran war looms large as Rubio meets Chinese counterpart. This is an article from Reuters. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Chinese counterpart Wang Yi discussed on Wednesday a visit to the U.S. in September by Chinese President Xi Jinping during an Asian gathering where ministers voiced concern about the Iran war and South China Sea tensions. Rubio said he and Wang discussed at length the need to lay the groundwork for a very positive visit by Xi, and it was their job to manage the big differences between the two countries and ensure they did not get out of control. Wang demanded that the U.S. respect China's core interests, effectively manage differences and disagreements, and address China's legitimate concerns, according to an official Chinese summary, which called the meeting pragmatic, positive, and constructive. Wang and Rubio agreed to make sound preparations for the next stage of high-level exchanges, Wang's ministry said in a statement. The broader ASEAN meeting in Manila comes amid a flare-up in the conflict between the U.S. and Iran, and while tensions simmer between Beijing and a close U.S. ally, the Philippines, over an incident in the South China Sea on Monday that led each to summon the other's ambassador. Meeting with foreign ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, who expressed concerns about the Middle East war, Rubio put the blame squarely on Iran. The problem we're having right now is that they're not serious about talks. If they're serious, we're serious. If they're not, then we will do what's necessary to protect our interests and also the interests of our allies, Rubio said. He stressed that Iran could not be allowed to control the Strait of Hormuz, as it could set a dangerous precedent for other parts of the world. Rubio's remarks follow his opinion piece in Philippine media on Tuesday that aimed at Beijing's conduct in the South China Sea, warning of dire new threats if those waters were to fall under the control of a power willing to use commerce as a geopolitical weapon. Beijing claims sovereignty over almost the entire South China Sea via a line on its maps that cuts into the exclusive economic zones of Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam, and is at the center of long-running disputes over a multitude of islands and features. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong said Monday's altercation between China's Coast Guard and Philippine Navy personnel in the South China Sea was risky and destabilizing. The countries of the region have a choice to make about how we all respond to that, Wong told reporters. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian hit back at Wong, saying Australia had no right to intervene in the South China Sea and that Beijing urges relevant countries to stop stirring up tension and inciting confrontation.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and we will now go to our editorial. Safer Nights. In response to growing concern over recent violence on Buffalo's Chippewa Street, city leaders and business owners must work toward a solution that promotes a peaceful, safe environment while providing an outlet for entertainment. Those goals are inseparable, but some young people in the weekend night crowd, trends younger, have been arguing, fighting, and at times firing guns at each other, creating a powder keg. It cannot be allowed to explode. So how do you get the adults in the room to calm the younger adults? Many teenagers naturally seek out nightlife before they're legally old enough to participate fully. The opportunity to go out with friends on a weekend night, or these days even a weeknight, and blow off steam at a bar or a dance club is simply irresistible, even if it means hanging outside the establishment in one of the private parking lots because you're too young to get in. Trouble has often started and ended outside the bars and nightclubs, on the street, sidewalk, and most of all, parking lots. For example, early in the morning of July 12th, an 18-year-old shot a 17-year-old on Pearl Street near Chippewa. Police seized 3 loaded firearms in the investigation of that incident. On a macro level, there were several large-scale brawls involving young people over the 4th of July weekend. 11 people were shot in the city in at least 5 locations. Most, if not all, stemmed from a large street takeover party. Lately, it seems unrest is radiating throughout the city. Chippewa is often the focal point. It is where a member of the Buffalo Police Department's top brass pushed a woman to the ground. The video is widely available online, and police officials, to their credit, released the body camera footage. Strategies on how to stem the violence are urgently needed. Fillmore District Council member Mitchell Nowakowski is exploring the idea of making the Chippewa Strip accessible only to those 21 and over on weekend nights. Nowakowski has asked the city's law department to explore creating an ordinance that would allow city police, in coordination with the entertainment district leadership, to put barriers in place restricting access on Chippewa Street. The barriers would include the intersections with Main and Delaware Avenue. It would mean identification checkpoints with access limited to people over the age of 21. The ordinance was drafted would apply to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights after 10 p.m. Say the word Chippewa, and folks from Buffalo to Batavia and beyond think of what it is, an entertainment district designated by the city's Green Code. The designation comes with higher review and scrutiny in the city's zoning and planning code. The Chippewa Alliance is already working with fellow businesses, the city and district police, to curb raucous behavior. It is clear that more needs to be done. Buffalo's entertainment district is special. It includes live music, events, bars, restaurants, and entertainment. Chippewa hosted a major block party as part of the Meet Me Downtown campaign, spearheaded by M&T Bank, that coincided with the Taste of Buffalo weekend on July 11th, with pleasant, non-confrontational results. The next major block party on Chippewa Street is scheduled for August 8th. It's assumed that a Home by 10 throwback dance party series for adults likely won't draw the loud, potentially violent past midnight activity that stakeholders fear. Whether an ordinance barring the under 21 crowd on weekends will work is up for debate, but at least it's a start to the conversation about how to make nightlife on Chippewa Street safe and enjoyable for all.
And our Another Voice article is on capital punishment, and it's written by Paul McQuillian, who is chairman of the Western New York Coalition Against the Death Penalty. Gendron case does not call for death penalty. On May 14, 2022, Peyton Gendron shot and killed 10 of our neighbors, all African American, and wounded 3 others on Buffalo's east side. The shooting has taken a horrible toll on the victims, their families, and the Buffalo community. Gendron, then 18, was a radicalized racist who pleaded guilty to 10 counts of murder, domestic terrorism, and hate crimes in New York State Court in 2024 for the mass killings. He has since been sentenced to 11 terms of life in prison without parole under state law. Now the federal government wants to execute him. This trial will be expensive and time-consuming, all for the satisfaction of killing another individual, as if our community hasn't suffered enough. And death penalty appeals can last decades. We should never forget this tragedy. It is now part of who we are. But while we can all condemn his horrific killing spree, does it make sense to try him again for the same offenses in federal court, all with the ultimate goal of putting him to death? I would argue no, it's not what Buffalo is about. Gendron has attempted to plead guilty to all federal charges against him prior to trial. The federal government rejected that plea offer so that it can pursue its sole objective, his execution. And now, more than 4 years after the fact, the victims, their families, and the entire Buffalo community must relive the darkest day in our history. As the trial will be held in Buffalo, our community will be called upon to fill the jury pool. Residents will be seated to fill the jury box. They will be called upon to decide if the admitted killer, now 22, should be put to death for heinous crimes he committed when he was 18 and radicalized by social media. The fact remains that he has been charged, convicted, and sentenced under the laws of New York State, where the state Supreme Court abolished capital punishment in 2004. Further remedy by the federal government is not required. Gendron will die in prison. The death penalty in the United States is a testament to our failed policies. No one will be safer and no one will be more secure by executing another individual that the system has failed. We call for an end to his death penalty trial and the end of the federal death penalty.
And our editorial cartoon today is from Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News. It is one frame. It is Uncle Sam sitting on a toilet, pants down, hands over his head with his toppling his hat back a little bit. And he has a paper on the floor that he's reading, and in the door comes Robert Kennedy with a Maha bottle in his hand, and Uncle Sam is reading the headlines, which says cyclosporiasis outbreak. Underneath it, it said food inspector cuts. And Robert Kennedy is saying to him, he's holding that bottle of milk. It says, chug some raw milk to flush your system, referring to the cyclosporiasis and what it does to the human person, as well as the lack of food inspectors' cuts, resulting in a further spread.
Our first opinion piece is by J.B. Branch from the Chicago Tribune. Get ready for the AI public relations blitz. For years, Silicon Valley executives warned artificial intelligence would transform society, replace jobs, and perhaps pose existential risks. They built products grounded in what should be considered the largest copyright infringement of human history. They fired their own coders who helped build their AI while warning more firings were to come, not just in tech, but throughout all industries. They told artists, writers, and musicians that machines trained on their cultural contributions will outperform them. And then something unexpected happened. The American public didn't cheer. In offices across the U.S., workers are hesitant to use AI products they are being told will soon do their jobs better. Medical professionals scoff at the idea that an AI-enabled machine could offer better patient care. People refuse to choose sycophantic AI companions that in some cases have encouraged self-harm. While some AI products have proved fun or useful, Americans are increasingly suspicious of the technology as a whole. Americans aren't irrationally afraid of innovation. The public also isn't resistant to AI because it just doesn't get it. The mistrust big tech has come to realize has calcified over years of abuse. The public is sending a message to the wannabe AI oligarchs. You've made your bed, now sit in it. Big tech has a major accountability and responsibility problem, but the tech bros see it as nothing more than a serious public relations problem. So get ready for the rehabilitation campaign. Meta is launching a workforce academy to train tradespeople to build the data centers required for its AI ambitions. Anthropic is creating Claude Core, almost assuredly named to invoke positive connotations with public fellowships such as AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps, placing young people in nonprofits to spread AI adoption. OpenAI and Microsoft are partnering to train teachers to use AI. Each announcement arrives wrapped in the language of social good as if to scream, big tech wants to give back. But Americans shouldn't buy that narrative. You certainly cannot spend years treating regulation as a threat, suddenly position yourself as society's trusted guide into your ideal future, while evading accountability, and then act bewildered when the public rejects your God machine. What makes this moment remarkable is how out of touch these tech barons are. The AI business model is about as selfish and inhumane as a setup as possible. That's not hyperbole. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman's words describe the gobsmacking greed and disdain big tech has toward the basic principles of humanity. People talk about how much energy it takes to train an AI model, but it also takes a lot of energy to train a human, quote unquote. Tech CEOs have fundamentally destroyed any grace the public was willing to lend. The benefits only flow upward to billionaires while communities absorb the costs. That is why the public remains unconvinced. Meta's training academy may help some workers. Anthropic's fellowships may support nonprofits. OpenAI may help some teachers use ChatGPT. But none of that will erase the public's realization that AI is being built for companies rather than for people. No fellowship, academy, or glossy public opinion campaign can repair what years of extraction and broken promises have eroded. Silicon Valley spent years teaching the public what it values. Now it is asking to be believed. But trust, once squandered, is far harder to build than the next model update.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour, and we will continue with our opinion pieces. Next, coming from Kathleen Parker of the Washington Post. Graham, a cheerful warrior, wisely chose action over irrelevance. It is often said that if you're not disliked, you haven't done anything notable during your Earth cycle. Victor Hugo warned of this in his essay, Villemain, published in 1845. You have enemies. Why? It is the story of every man who has done a great deed or created a new idea. It is the cloud which thunders around everything that shines. Fame must have enemies as light must have gnats. Lindsey Graham, the longtime Republican senator from South Carolina, had barely drawn his last breath before the gnats swarmed at the clouds thundered. His death this month from a brief and sudden illness, later determined to be an aortic dissection, brought out the best and the worst of our humanity. There's no point in spotlighting the slime left by creatures noteworthy only for their conspicuous lust for attention. Others more deserving of our attention spoke luminously of the South Carolina native who turned his early life of hard knocks into a career of public service. Graham's adoption of his sister after their parents died when he was 22 and she was 13 was the first hint of the kind of man he was and would become. Generous, caring, a friend to all, including his political foes, and a cheerful warrior whose wit could make a mannequin laugh. He also was a military lawyer and retired as a colonel in the Air Force Reserve after serving for 33 years. Unapologetically hawkish, Graham had just returned to Washington after a meeting in Ukraine with President Vladimir Zelensky. I leave conspiracy theorists to their delusions while also reminding them, along with Graham's critics, that death imposes a grace period out of respect for the late and bereaved. We once knew this as a nation, but social media has no patience. Graham's colleagues seemed to agree that if you didn't like the senator, you didn't know him. Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey told MS Now that Graham was the kind of guy who would fight ferociously in public, but when the spotlight was off, he was like, "Hey, Cory, can we talk and try to figure out, is there a way to make a deal?" Even the media liked quippy Graham, especially during the 2016 presidential primary debates when Graham was relegated to the undercard kids table from which he reigned hilariously, usually at Donald Trump's expense. His many memorable quotes on and off the stage haunted him as he morphed into Trump's trusted sidekick. In recent years, countless people have asked me what in the world happened to Lindsey Graham. They couldn't wrap their minds around the Graham who once seemed to despise Trump and the Graham who was Trump's gleeful golfing pal. The answer is that Graham was above all a pragmatist. He could either be in the room and play a role in history, or what? Continue to snipe and become irrelevant? Graham decided he could do more on the inside than on the outside. Not only was he in every room, he was often there before anyone else. Senator Dick Durbin served as a Senate Judiciary Committee with Graham and worked with him as part of the Gang of Eight to reform immigration policy. Durbin remembered a meeting with Trump and Graham in the Oval Office to discuss immigration when Graham told the president he was just wrong and made a passionate argument in favor of immigrants. Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan, appointed by President Barack Obama, gave Graham credit for clinching her confirmation with humor. During a Senate hearing, he had asked her where she was at Christmas. Kagan answered, "Like all Jews, I was probably at a Chinese restaurant." Somehow, Senator Graham made me look funny, which is a harder thing entirely, Kagan said. Many people said to me afterward that exchange with Senator Graham was the moment my confirmation was sealed. Like everyone, Graham wasn't just one thing. The short version is that he was a Southern gentleman who loved his country and would rather hold a meeting of the minds than a grudge. even if he had to fight to get there. Provocateur, diplomat, humorist, warrior, compromiser, and friend, Graham devoted his life to his country. May he rest in peace, and may we heed Hugo's advice on how to regard one's critics. Do not bother yourself about it. Disdain. Keep your mind serene as you keep your life clear.
And our final opinion piece is written by Scott Lincicome from Bloomberg Opinion. Foreign imports ride to the White House's rescue over and over. Shortly before Independence Day, President Trump suspended U.S. tariffs on fertilizer from Morocco after declaring that threats to domestic supplies of the product constituted a national emergency. As Bloomberg News reported, the action was intended to help farmers and consumers worried about Iran-related price hikes. The Department of Agriculture estimates that lifting the duties will reduce phosphate fertilizer prices by 22%, saving farmers more than $1.8 billion this year, savings they'd presumably pass on to consumers. In isolation, the tariff-happy Trump administration's fertilizer decision is a comical footnote in a lamentable Iran war saga, a mundane, albeit legally dubious, government move to alleviate a sliver of the war's inflationary effects and to placate an important political constituency before the fall midterms. Yet, this is no one-off. Instead, it's the latest in a long string of U.S. trade actions that no one in an increasingly protectionist Washington is eager to acknowledge. Seemingly, every time domestic supplies of essential goods and politicians standing with voters are at risk, the government lets imports ride to the rescue. When avian influenza crippled egg supplies in February, the Trump administration's solution centered on importing 100 million eggs to stabilize the market and help temper prices. In November, Trump responded to palpable voter anxiety over grocery affordability by issuing multiple proclamations to lift, quote, reciprocal tariffs on a wide range of agricultural commodities. Early this year, he addressed beef shortages caused by droughts and screwworm by expanding quotas on Argentinian beef. After the Iran war started, the White House moved to stave off domestic energy shortages by issuing an unprecedented waiver of the protectionist Jones Act, which normally restricts domestic shipping to American-made ports. And broad tariff exemptions for imported hardware and related items are fueling the artificial intelligence build-out that powers the U.S. economy and stock trade. Similar moves predate Trump's second term, when problems at a Michigan infant formula factory caused the worst supply chain crisis of the pandemic era. Congress suspended formula tariffs, and the Biden administration waived regulatory barriers, launching Operation Fly Formula to pilot it in from Europe. Biden also invoked the same emergency authority Trump used for Moroccan fertilizer when he waived duties on imported solar panels to alleviate shortages that supposedly threatened energy security, the renewables build-out, and his signature legislative achievement, the Inflation Reduction Act. And between 2020 and 2022, the government modified the tariff schedule 10 times for pandemic-related reasons, with every change running in the direction of freer trade, mostly waiving or suspending duties on imported medical goods. From these actions, spanning 6 years and 3 administrations, we can draw 2 important lessons. The first is political. Protectionists in the government have routinely dismissed American business pleas for tariff relief in supposed service of loftier goals like national security and supply chain resiliency. Yet when short supplies and high prices threaten these same officials' political future, tariff relief arrives with remarkable speed, and bedrock nationalist principles melt away. The second lesson is larger and should reframe how Washington talks about resiliency today. The dominant story since 2020 is that the pandemic exposed the dangers of globalization. Open trade and long, complex supply chains had left the United States vulnerable to economic shocks and intensely dependent on foreign suppliers. The typical fix was to reshore the domestic production of critical items via tariffs, subsidies, and other localization policies. Resiliency had become synonymous with onshoring. Yet, time and time again, one of Washington's most reliable responses to an actual shock, whether it originated in a foreign war, a domestic factory shutdown, or a global pandemic, has been the opposite of onshoring. It's been import liberalization, not protectionism, and supply diversification, not autarky. Rhetorical misdirection aside, the government's real-world response is welcome and consistent with economic research from the pandemic. Studies have found that, contrary to the conventional wisdom, goods dependent on international supply chains didn't face greater disruptions than ones sourced domestically. In fact, global production units frequently proved more resilient than their nationalized counterparts, largely because the former had diversified sources and could more easily adjust. Even in sensitive sectors involving non-friendly nations, trade proved remarkably resilient, helping to alleviate critical bottlenecks rather than cause them. And the product that failed most spectacularly during the pandemic was the one the United States had already walled off from foreign competition: baby formula. None of this means that economic openness should be the only policy governments adopt to prepare for or adjust to supply shocks, whether foreign or domestic. The global economy can raise genuine security concerns when, for example, adversaries have a stranglehold on critical goods with no adequate substitutes. After the global economy's surprising resilience during the Iran war has shown how emergency government stockpiles can calm markets and fill temporary gaps in supply.
Cyclosporiasis hits Taco Bell, won't likely leave a lasting scar. U.S. health officials are investigating the source of the cyclosporiasis outbreak, which has sickened thousands of people in Michigan and 4 other states. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has linked the parasite Cyclospora to a Taylor Farms plant in Mexico. However, Mexico said on Tuesday that there was no evidence yet to suggest that lettuce sourced from it caused the outbreak in the United States. Foot traffic at Taco Bell, owned by Yum Brands, was down 29.8% as of Saturday, compared with the average traffic on all Saturdays from January 1 through July 6, according to Placer AI, a company that gathers foot traffic data. Worry customers may temporarily take their appetites elsewhere to sidestep any perceived health risk. Other fast food chains are also protectively communicating with customers. Salad chains, Sweet Green and Chopped, post notices emphasizing that they do not use iceberg lettuce, while Chipotle highlighted to app users that it does not serve shredded iceberg lettuce. Just Salad separately emailed customers saying it does not use iceberg pre-cut or shredded lettuce. At a New Jersey Chipotle outlet on Tuesday, Caleb Brin, 23, said he had forgotten all about the outbreak when he ordered a burrito bowl with lettuce. Brin said he is only mildly concerned. No one has died from this. Then pausing, he said, "Right." Ruth.
House okays $1.5 trillion budget. This is from Reuters. The U.S. House of Representatives narrowly passed its version of a massive defense policy bill on Wednesday, despite Democrats' concerns about its huge price tag, the Iran war, and a provision that would boost Pentagon ties to Israel. The fiscal 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, which authorizes an unprecedented $1.15 trillion in spending for the military, passed the House by 216 to 212. The vote was largely along party lines, All but 7 Republicans voted in favor of the measure, and all but 6 Democrats voted against. Democrats objected to the huge amount of money being authorized for the Pentagon at a time when President Donald Trump and his fellow Republicans slash spending on social programs. They also object to the ongoing and deeply unpopular war with Iran, which the Pentagon said has cost the U.S. $37.5 billion so far. Republicans said the trillion-dollar spending is essential to support the military as it wages war in Iran, fund defense systems development, and equip purchases and provide benefits for troops. Another measure that worried Democrats was a provision that would substantially expand military technology cooperation between the United States and Israel, despite calls from many Americans, particularly on the left, to roll back U.S. support for Israel over concern about the heavy toll on Palestinian civilians and its attacks in Gaza. This year's bill faces major challenges given deep partisan divisions within Congress on issues ranging from the massive size of the military budget to the Iran war, aid to Israel and Ukraine, and culture war causes like the treatment of transgender troops. The fiscal 2027 NDAA's fate was also complicated because Republicans voted to attach to it the Save America Act, Trump-backed legislation to tighten restrictions on voting before sending it to the Senate. The effect of that decision on the NDAA's fate was unclear, given that there are not enough votes in the Senate to pass the voting law. Senate Democrats blocked the Senate's version of the NDAA last week. The chamber's Republican leaders pledged to try again to advance the bill before leaving Washington for their August recess. Each year, the House and Senate pass their own versions of the NDAA before Armed Services Committee negotiators agree on compromise version that then comes up for a vote in each chamber.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present today's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Dutka Patricia M. Hers Shorn Babette Nee Olbert. Naiteki Dennis. O'Brien Kevin. And on the national note, singer Jim Gilstrap, who lent his voice to the Good Times theme song and collaborated with Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, and Aretha Franklin, has died. He was 79. To the world, Jim Gilstrap was a legendary voice. To us, he was simply Uncle James, a beloved husband, uncle, mentor, and friend, said Jeffrey A. Gilstrap, who was a family member. No matter how far his incredible talent took him, he never forgot his roots, his family, or the values that shaped him. As kids, all of us nieces and nephews proudly bragged to classmates that our Uncle Jim was the voice behind the temporary layoffs line from Good Times. We'd remind them that he also sang, "You are my sunshine of my life." Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please contact us at 716-821-5555.
And now we'll go to our Royal Stars, our astrology article. Happy birthday for Thursday, July 23rd, 2026. You are fun-loving, likable, and helpful. People respond to your optimism and easygoing manner. This is a year of work and construction. As we know, the stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 is dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And perusing the signs today, it looks like everyone has either a positive or an average day today. Aries, positive day. Opportunities for vacations, sports events, and fun socializing with others continue to come your way. At work, co-workers are supportive. Tonight, learn and explore. Taurus, positive day. Today, Mercury stops being retrograde, which will reduce transportation delays, car problems, and mixed-up communications that you've been dealing with for a while. Tonight, check your finances. Gemini, an average day. You have lots of energy and drive. You'll be happy to know that Mercury stops being in retrograde today, which will improve your finances. Tonight, cooperate. Cancer, positive day. Your life will resume a greater degree of normalcy, and silly mistakes will be reduced along with delays and transportation problems. Tonight, get organized. Leo, positive day. You are in a strong position because both the Sun and lucky Jupiter are in your sign. Fiery Mars is also well placed, promoting teamwork, competitive sports, and athletics. Tonight, socialize. Virgo, positive day. You're enjoying socializing with others. However, you also have a strong tendency now to work alone or behind the scenes. Tonight, relax at home. Libra, average day. For the last month, Mercury has been retrograding at the top of your chart, affecting your relations with bosses, parents, and authority figures from the past. As of today, this is over. Tonight, conversations. Scorpio, positive day. Tread carefully and restrict your spending to food and gas. Don't volunteer for anything. Tonight, check your money. Sagittarius, average day. Go forward with confidence now to make plans for travel, publishing, medicine, the law, and higher education. Tonight, you're strong. Capricorn, positive day. In the last month, Mercury has been retrograding opposite your sign, attracting ex-partners and old friends back into your world. As of today, Mercury retrograde is finished. Tonight, welcome privacy. Aquarius, a positive day. You'll be relieved to know that today Mercury retrograde stops. It has been creating equipment problems, delays, and confusion with respect to your job and your health. Tonight, be friendly. And Pisces, it's an average day. Today you might feel restless for adventure or a change. You're working hard, but you also want to explore something new. Tonight, you're admired.
And from Today in History, in 1962, Jackie Robinson made history again, becoming the first black player to be inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. And in 2012, astronaut and physicist Sally Ride, the first U.S. woman to travel into space, died at the age of 61 of pancreatic cancer. And there is a cute little cartoon, Hi and Lois. It's a delivery man coming to deliver a package, and little Lois answers the door. And he looks at her and he says, I need an adult to sign for this. And she looks up at him and says, I can sign my name as well as, if not better, than most grown-ups. And he just looks down at her and says, I'm sure. And with the lack of cursive, I'm sure that's no joke. And in news briefs, search underway for fishermen who slipped into the Niagara Gorge. Emergency responders from both sides of the border are searching for a missing man who fell from a rock in the lower Niagara River in Niagara Falls on Wednesday morning. Authorities said an 18-year-old was fishing in the gorge near the bottom of the staircase in Whirlpool State Park with 5 other people at about 10:15 a.m. when he fell into the wet water. They could see him struggling to swim and stay afloat, said the police in a news release. And also, U.S. reaches a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia reached a landmark agreement on civil nuclear power, the U.S. Energy Department said Wednesday, a deal that allows the kingdom to build nuclear reactors using American technology to enrich uranium. A civil nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia has been in the works for years during both President Donald Trump's first administration and that of former President Joe Biden. No deal came together before now, however, in part because of warnings from non-proliferation groups who say that it could offer Saudi Arabia a path to develop a nuclear weapon. Unlike the Biden plan, the deal does not include a protocol that allows the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency to carry out SNAP inspections. The deal would also allow Saudi Arabia to enrich uranium and reprocess nuclear waste, both of which are potential pathways to making a nuclear weapon. The Energy Department said the deal now goes to Congress. Unless Congress raises votes to object to the deal within 90 session days, the deal will go into force. It would need a 2/3 majority to override a presidential veto. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features for Thursday, July the 23rd on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. Let me fill in a little bit till Nick comes. U.S. Senate's Commerce Committee approved legislation Wednesday to toughen U.S. government ban on Chinese automakers entering the American market that could bar German automaker Mercedes-Benz from selling vehicles in the United States. China is an investor in Mercedes-Benz. Okay, Nick, take it away.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak. And we'll now go to our City and Region section. Roswell Park hires advisor to deal with growing deficits. This is written by John Harris, who's a news staff reporter. Faced with ongoing financial pressures, Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center has brought in a healthcare advisory firm in an attempt to bolster its performance and fortify its long-term outlook. Roswell Park this week confirmed it has retained Chicago-based Kaufman Hall for a 4-month engagement, which began in May, following a public bid process completed earlier this year. Kaufman Hall, part of the larger Vizient Inc., in the last decade has advised more than 900 healthcare organizations. The focus of this engagement is to help Roswell Park leaders identify opportunities to strengthen performance and align strategic planning for long-term financial sustainability, said Roswell Park spokesperson Annie Deck-Miller. The retention of Kaufman Hall was first disclosed in the agenda for Roswell Park's June 24th Board of Directors meeting, though discussion of the item was held in executive session according to the agenda document. The pursuit of external expertise to support improvements, however, was discussed at a board meeting in March according to the board minutes. Roswell Park continues to grow its revenue, but its expenses also are rising quickly. For the fiscal year ended March 31st, the Cancer Center recorded an operating loss of $69.8 million on operating revenues of about $1.35 billion, according to its audited financial statements. When factoring in non-operating revenues and expenses, Roswell Park logged a deficit of more than $63 million for the year ended March 31st. That was the Cancer Center's third straight year with a deficit, following a $57 million deficit in 2025 and a more than $54 million deficit in 2024. It posted a surplus of nearly $18 million for the year that ended March 31st, 2023, according to its annual reports. The community and the state have a big interest in the financial stability of Roswell Park, a public benefit corporation that receives more than $100 million annually in state support. Roswell Park, a National Cancer Institute designated comprehensive cancer center, employs about 4,000 people and cares for more than 50,000 patients a year. Despite the financial struggles, Roswell Park continues to expand its operations and see more patients, and its ratings from credit agencies remain solid, a good indicator of overall viability. For the year ending March 31st, active patients diagnosed, treated, or seen in follow-up clinics increased 3%, while outpatient visits jumped 4.3%. With that, net patient revenue grew 5% to $1.19 billion, but salaries, wages, and benefits grew 7.5% to about $621 million, while supplies and purchased services increased 5.5% to $723 million. At Roswell Park's board meeting late last year, Chief Financial Officer Ryan Grady discussed the financial pressures facing the Cancer Center and the rest of the healthcare industry. Roswell Park also had costs within its own house, such as the expense of implementing a new revenue cycle system. He informed the board that a new schedule had been added to quarterly financial statements to report Roswell Park's compliance with its debt service coverage ratio, which is a measure of an entity's ability to cover its debt obligations.
A second Costco store is coming to Buffalo, Niagara. Costco will open a store in West Seneca, according to Town Supervisor Gary Dixon. After a long wait, I am proud to announce that the latest plans for the Seneca Mall site have been submitted to the Planning Board, with Costco identified as the anchor tenant, said Dixon in an online post. The Planning Board is scheduled to meet August 13th. West Seneca has waited for this for decades. I appreciate everyone's patience, but there still is a lot of work to do. The plans will probably be further refined as the project moves forward. In addition to the site itself, the surrounding road network will be significantly upgraded by the developer, said Nixon. Plans posted on Facebook by Dixon show the store, identified as Costco, that would cover 158,000 square feet with 812 parking spaces. The plans do not include an estimated opening date for the West Seneca store. Dixon declined to speculate on when the store would open, but said it would be a welcome addition to the town. Costco itself has an excellent reputation as a great place to shop and a great place to work. Of the big boxes, you probably say it's at the higher end. Costco will also fuel a long-awaited revival of the former Seneca Mall site. The mall was built in the 1960s, demolished in the 1990s, and sat mostly vacant ever since then. A Costco would be a strong magnet for other retailers interested in piggybacking off the traffic the new store will generate. The focal point of Southtown's retail, one centered around the McKinley Mall in Hamburg, has since shifted toward Quaker Crossing in Orchard Park, as enclosed malls have fallen out of favor with shoppers. As a former mall, that location is well suited for the traffic the store is expected to draw. That whole area is set to take off, said Dixon. A second Costco store would shake up the Buffalo Niagara shopping sector in an even bigger way, with two of its warehouse clubs split between the North Towns and South Towns. Its soon-to-be dual stores will inject a new competitor with a national following into a retail market that isn't growing. Because the local population isn't growing, that means the warehouse club will take market share away from other stores. Because Costco sells everything from gifts and groceries to jewelry, furniture, and appliances, almost every retailer in the region has the potential to be affected when Costco comes to town. Last year, speculation swirled that Costco would open a store at the former Seneca Mall site when a developer filed plans with the town of West Seneca for a project matching the size of the Amherst building. At the time, Dixon confirmed a discount club store was coming to the location, but he wouldn't verify the store's identity. MG2, a Seattle-based design firm that is working with Costco on the Amherst store, said on its website that the typical warehouse can take about 110 days from the start of construction until the store opens. That doesn't count for weather delays, and the Amherst store is proof that construction can take much longer. Benchmark Streamline purchased 12 vacant parcels for $7.96 million that would create a roughly 48-acre site in West Seneca. It encompasses most of the property where the former Seneca Mall was located. Dallas Property Investment Company, NS Retail Holdings, bought the remaining 7 acres, which houses the Tops Market and the land where a longtime Kmart was demolished several years ago. Costco has been slow to come to Buffalo Niagara region, even as its stores have spread throughout the country, and the chain has grown into a retail powerhouse with a devoted shopping base. Costco is a membership club that sells everything from groceries and home goods to engagement rings and furniture at a discounted rate. It has a devoted following among consumers. The closest Costco location is in Rochester. But that will change in a matter of months. Costco is building a store in Niagara Falls Boulevard in Amherst that is expected to open in October. The Amherst store originally was expected to open spring of 2026, but Costco said in May that it needed to bump up the opening to August, blaming winter weather-related delays and that hampered construction. Costco now says it needs even more time to complete the Amherst store, which still is not listed on its website, showing stores that are expected to open soon, although the company has posted openings for 40 different positions on its website.
After Senate loss, Zellner faces fight to be party chair. This is by Justin Sondel, a new staff reporter. After losing his bid to keep his Senate seat, state Senate seat last month, Jeremy Zellner now must fight to hold on to his other leadership position as chairman of the Erie County Democratic Committee. Zellner, who lost his primary to Assemblyman John Rivera just a few months after coming into office through a special election, will face off against Amherst Town Council member John Davis to keep his spot atop the county Democratic Committee. Davis, in his first year in elective office, announced in a news release Wednesday morning his intention to defeat Zellner, who has held the position for 14 years, during the party's upcoming reorganizational meeting in September. In an interview with the News, Davis, an engineer with Wendell Companies, said he wants to lead the next generation of county Democrats and to improve the local party by increasing transparency, strengthening the various party subcommittees, and building greater unity among committee members and leaders. And he said Zellner's defeat, despite significant advantages over Rivera, signals an appetite for change both inside the party and from Democratic voters. In the days following his defeat in the state Senate primary, Zellner told the Buffalo News he intends to run to keep his spot as party chair. In a phone interview Wednesday, Zellner defended his record, pointing to the many Democratic wins over the years, in particularly last year's election cycle where Democrats, including Davis, had wins across the country. And Zellner said Davis contributed to his Senate campaign account, endorsed him, and appeared in campaign materials supporting his candidacy. He has faced criticism over the years for what some call a manipulative use of systems and rules to give favored candidates an advantage, including in the case of his own nomination to become the Democratic candidate on the ballot to replace Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan in the state Senate after he went to City Hall. In special elections, the county parties, in accordance with their own internal rules and bylaws, select the candidate for the ballot. Zellner recused himself from the selection process, but has been criticized by Rivera as having significant influence over the party that selected him. Zellner, who also served as the Democratic County Election Commissioner until he resigned last year to run for the state Senate seat, went on to beat Amherst businessman Dan Gagliardo in the February special election, but lost to Rivera by nearly 10 points in the June primary. Karen Hoke, the party's endorsed candidate in a three-way primary to replace Rivera in the Assembly — he could not run for two state legislature seats simultaneously — was also defeated handily by attorney Adam Bojack, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Some political observers have read the defeat of the party-endorsed candidates by members of the progressive wing as a sign of dissatisfaction with Zellner and establishment Democrats generally within the party. Erie County legislator Jean Vanal, an Amherst Democrat, said she does feel there is dissension within the party and that she expects more candidates to emerge as the party moves towards September. Bob Davis, an Amherst Republican committee chair who served as county chair for more than 10 years, said he believes the dissatisfaction with Zellner does make him vulnerable, and that some of the messaging that Gagliardo used in his unsuccessful campaign was useful to Rivera in the primary.
For all of those that were planning on going to the naked bike ride, sorry to tell you, it's canceled. After running smoothly for 10 years, violent social media threats drove organizers of the 11th annual Buffalo World Naked Bike Ride to cancel this year's event, citing concerns for the safety of their riders. With the outpouring of overwhelming disapproval from concerned community members and the threats of violence and death towards organizers and riders, it is unrealistic to ensure the safety of our wonderful supporters, organizers of the event said in a social media post on Monday. The Buffalo World Naked Bike Ride started 10 years ago as a fundraiser and protest against fossil fuel dependency. According to the event's Facebook page, the riders' naked bodies symbolize the vulnerability of cyclists on the road.
We'll continue now with our reading of our, sorry about that. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 14 minutes past the hour, and we will continue on with sports. Vastly improved. This is our Lance Lysowski article on the Bills. No position group got exposed during the playoffs more than the Buffalo Bills cornerbacks. Maxwell Hairston, their rookie first-round draft, could not play because of an ankle injury. Jamarcus Ingram, a useful depth player, particularly in dime personnel, got claimed off waivers by the Houston Texans in November. When Tre'Davious White went down with an injury during the fourth quarter of the AFC divisional round, Broncos coach Sean Payton called a play to have quarterback Bo Nix go after the replacement. The game-tying touchdown given up by practice squad corner Dane Jackson bothered Bills management for months. General manager and president of football operations Brandon Beane did not want to run out of cornerbacks again. Rather than signing an aging veteran, Beane used a second-round draft pick on Ohio State's Davison Igbenosum. Hairston and Christian Benford will enter training camp July 29th as the Bills starters at boundary cornerback. However, they aren't the only important cogs in Coach Joe Brady's mission to transform the defense into a unit that causes sleepless nights for opposing offensive coordinators. Igbenosum isn't the only prominent newcomer either. The Bills replaced nickel quarterback Teron Johnson because he does not have the cover skills to play in their new defense. Another draft pick was used on a cornerback, Toriano Pride Jr., plus Beane overhauled the depth chart at safety, signing C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Geno Stone to build around Cole Bishop. The group has the potential to be a vastly improved secondary compared to last season. The overhaul will not matter if Benford does not have an outstanding season. The Bills need to be able to trust him to shadow an opponent's number one receiver. Benford produced some exceptional plays, but he's moving into a new system. Jay Valai, the Bills' cornerbacks coach, did not need to be around Benford for long this spring to see how the veteran will make an impact in 2026. He's really passionate about his job and opportunity. His true leadership you'll see through people he affects more than the words he says. I've watched him on the side. He has one-on-one convos with guys and really pours into them. That's what makes him different. To me, he's one of the best leadership I've seen around. On the roster, 8, Benford, Hairston, D. Alford, Igbenosum, Pride, Decorey Couch, Jordan Dunner, Kenai Walker. How many on the 53? 5, Benson, Hairston, Alford, Igbenosum, and Pride. Most impactful off-season move. Alford has an incredible story. After working at FedEx during the pandemic, Alford earned a roster spot on the Canadian Football League's Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He was the first player signed by the Bills in free agency because defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard needed a versatile nickel cornerback who can play man coverage. The move allowed them to focus on boundary cornerback in the draft and provided Leonhard with an important chess piece for his 3-4 scheme. Alford started 23 games across the past 3 seasons with the Falcons. The Bills plan to use more than one player in that spot. Gardner-Johnson, Stone, and fellow safety Jordan Hancock all are options to line up in the slot depending on the personnel grouping and opponent. Biggest question to answer in camp: how do the quarterbacks adjust to the Bills' new defense? Leonhard may ask them to play more man coverage. The terminology has changed. Responsibilities shift, especially in a different scheme. Younger players such as Hairston and Igbenosum had time on task during the spring, but Benford missed the voluntary portion of off-season workouts to tend to a personal situation. Spring practices are also a flawed evaluation data point for cornerbacks because no one is in pads, and the lack of physicality impacts how they cover receivers. The battle to watch: Hairston versus Igbenosum. It would take a miserable performance or injury during training camp for Hairston, a first-round draft pick in 25, not to join Benford as the Bills' 2 starting quarterbacks. Competition is important, though, and Leonhard needs to prepare Igbenosum for the NFL. It is worth monitoring how those snaps are distributed. The Bells could also lighten Benford's workload some days to get the younger cornerbacks on the field. An under-the-radar player? Pride, a cornerback from Missouri, ran a 4.32 second 40-yard dash at the scouting combine. He's not big, 5'10", and his open field tackling is a potential area of concern, but he is as tenacious a player who fared well against top competition.
UB football predicted to finish 6th in MAC. The University of Buffalo may have received a vote of confidence from Mid-Atlantic Conference coaches entering the 2026 football season. Despite Pete Lombo's Bulls' 7th-place finish in the MAC last season, new coaches and uncertainty at several key positions, the Bulls were picked to finish 6th in the conference's preseason coaches poll. The poll was released Wednesday when the conference hosted its MAC football kickoff media day event at Ford Field in Detroit. In 2025, the Bulls finished 5-7 overall with 4-4 conference record. Lambeau lost All-American linebacker Red Murdoch to the Denver Broncos in the NFL draft and will have a new starter in the offensive backfield, but fellow MAC coaches apparently sense an improvement in Buffalo. Lambeau was joined by running back Terrence Shelton Jr. and defensive tackle Cornell Evans during the MAC's media day. UB is set to open the 2026 season against University of Albany at 7 p.m. Thursday, September 3rd at Broadview Stadium. We are going to take it one day at a time and 1 week at a time, Lambeau said. There's no question that this league continues to get better and better, and programs are committing resources to improving their rosters, and so we are going to need to get better as the season goes on. MAC football preseason poll. Western Michigan was picked to finish first and received 9 of the 13 coaches' votes to win the conference championship. Miami University, which was picked to finish second in the preseason poll, received the second most championship votes with 4. Coaches were not allowed to vote for their own teams. Here is the MAC football preseason coaches poll. First place, Western Michigan. Second place, Miami University. Toledo is third, Ohio is fourth, Central Michigan is fifth, Buffalo is sixth, Eastern Michigan is seventh, Kent State is eighth, Bowling Green is ninth, Akron is 10, Ball State is 11, Sacramento State is 12, and Massachusetts is 13. Western Michigan is the reigning MAC champion. The Broncos end their season with a 6-game win streak, and Buffalo will host WMU October 3rd at Broadview Stadium. Winning the turnover battle may give Buffalo a chance to finish in the top half of the MAC standings as predicted. UB lost 22 turnovers and forced 15 in 2025. That team 2 years ago never flinched when there was adversity, and we won a lot of close games, and we took great care of the football 2 years ago, Lambeau said during the media day. The biggest difference in last year's team was turnovers. We threw too many interceptions, and we put the ball on the ground a couple of times, and we didn't get as many. As good as our defense was, we didn't get many turnovers, and that really ended up making the difference in 2 or 3 of those one-score games.
From National League Baseball. Major League Baseball. Sorry. Thornton nabs first big league win. Zach Thornton tossed 6 scoreless innings and earned his first big league win Tuesday night as the visiting New York Mets beat the Milwaukee Brewers 4-0. Jared Young and Lewis Robert Jr. homered, while Carson Benj had an unusual 2-run double for the last-place Mets, who have won 3 of 5 since the All-Star break against the Brewers and Philadelphia Phillies, each of whom currently occupy a playoff spot. The Brewers, who were blanked for just the fourth time this season, had their 4-game win streak snapped. Thornton allowed 3 hits, walked 1, and struck out 2 while extending his scoreless streak to 18 innings, dating back to June 26th. He has a 1.93 ERA in his first 4 major league starts. The Rays trounced the Blue Jays. Nick Fortes and Yandy Diaz hit 3-run home runs, and the visiting Tampa Bay Rays clobbered the Toronto Blue Jays 12-2. Fortes finished with 3 hits and 4 RBIs as the Rays posted a season-best 21 hits. Chandler Simpson and Ben Williamson each added 4 hits, while Junior Caminero had 2 hits and 3 walks for the Rays. Tampa Bay is 7-1 against Toronto this season to clinch the season series. And Tuesday's game between the visiting Pittsburgh Pirates and New York Yankees has been postponed because of the inclement weather. The game was postponed for about 5 hours before the 7:05 p.m. first pitch, and the teams played a split doubleheader on Wednesday. And for the standings, in the American League East, Tampa Bay is in first place, 58 wins, 42, New York in second. Central League, Chicago first place, 53 wins, Cleveland second place. And in the West, Texas is in the lead with 51 wins, 50 losses. Seattle in second with 51 wins and 51 losses. And in the National League, Atlanta in the East is the first place, 58 wins, 42 losses, with Philadelphia second at 56 each win and loss. In the Central section, the Milwaukee is in the lead with 63 wins, 38 losses, with Chicago second. And in the West, Los Angeles is in the lead with 64 wins, 38 losses, with Arizona in the second place.
U.S. Soccer finds a home in Atlanta. U.S. Soccer believes a new state-of-the-art training center and finally having a permanent home can put it on equal footing with football's powerhouse nations in the years ahead, as it looks to the future following an early end to its World Cup adventure. Excitement and enthusiasm turned to familiar disappointment for U.S. fans as the team topped their group and reached the round of 16, only to exit the tournament in a 4-1 defeat by Belgium. The U.S. Soccer National Training Center in Fayetteville, outside Atlanta, opened in May in time for World Cup preparations, relocating its headquarters and almost 400 employees from Chicago. This is the first time U.S. Soccer has ever owned a blade of grass, the center's general manager, Tom Norton, told Reuters. It's an opportunity for us to bring all of our operation under one roof together so we can push our game to the next level. The center is the latest stage of its namesake Arthur Blank's quest to turn Atlanta into the country's soccer capital. The owner of the NFL's Falcons, Blank, poured $50 million into the project and was the engine behind the city's MLS franchise, Atlanta United, and is bringing the NWSL team to the region in 2028. The center features 17 outdoor playing surfaces, including 13 regulation-size grass pitches, along with the full-size artificial turf indoor pitch, the Nike High Performance Gym, and dining and nutrition areas. All 27 U.S. national teams will be catered for at the 200-acre facility, but there are plans to involve others. We are not going to limit what we're working with here. We're going to make sure that the rest of the soccer world can be welcomed here and grow the game together. The doors are open to the entire soccer community. U.S. Under-20 women's head coach Vicki Jepsen said the sprawling campus was one of the best in the world and miles better than St. George's Park, where teams in her native England train together. This is our fortress, this is our home, and it's incredible that we've got this, said Jepsen, whose team played out a 1-1 draw with England in the first match to be played on the center's dedicated even pitch.
And a short from basketball. The Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame will break with tradition Friday when it opens an exhibition highlighting the career of Golden State Warriors guard Stephen Curry. No other player in league history has received such an honor while still alive. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 30 minutes past the hour, and we will go see what Eric has to say today, if it will come up on my screen. Oh, sorry. Mother wants to move, but adult child won't leave home. Dear Eric, I'm a senior with 3 grown kids. After divorcing young, I rebuilt my life, earned a degree, and worked hard to save for retirement. 2 of my children are independent, but my 3rd child, with his family, still lives in my house despite many conversations and arguments about moving out. This prevents me from selling my home as planned, forcing me to use up my savings for my relocation to a different home. I feel manipulated and just want peace in retirement. I am considering hiring a realtor and attorney to move forward, though I am concerned this will hurt my relationship with this child. Am I wrong for prioritizing myself now? Signed, Frustrated. Dear Frustrated, you're not wrong at all. To be frank, it's imperative that you make a change in this situation. You write that you don't want to hurt your relationship with your child, which is understandable. But it seems clear that the relationship was already hurting. You're not being respected or heard. This isn't healthy for anyone. He may not want you to sell the house for a myriad of reasons, but you are the homeowner, and it's the right choice for you. He should respect that and support you in your next step rather than arguing with you. You don't write whether your child is paying into the mortgage or paying you rent, although I suspect this isn't the case, since you also write that you're using up your savings. It is absolutely fair for you to say that this isn't working for you emotionally or financially, and so you're making a change. Your child is not a minor. He can and should be responsible for providing for himself and his family. You can help, of course, but this seems to go beyond help, especially because it's hurting you. Contact the realtor and tell your son that you've decided to move forward. This doesn't need to be a discussion. If your child would like to purchase the home from you, that's great, but be firm about your decision to leave. You have already discussed this at length, and it doesn't seem that your child can be collaborative about this. This puts you in an impossible situation. He may continue to feel angry about it, but you can't be held captive by his anger. That emotion is his responsibility as well. Dear Eric, I am very punctual. Decades in business necessitated punctuality, and I carry being on time into my personal life. In my mind, it is disrespectful to be late and waste the time of others. My partner of many years is of a different mindset. While he is punctual for work, when it comes to personal plans or engagements, he is consistently 15 to 20 minutes late. I find it disrespectful and sometimes embarrassing. We have discussed this many times, and he knows it upsets me, but the tardiness is a constant. Any thoughts? Time after time. Dear Time, okay, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, so let me start by assuring you that you're not being unreasonable and that I understand how frustrating it is to always be waiting for someone else. However, you write that you're of the mindset that lateness is disrespectful and he feels otherwise. So is there some freedom in interpreting his actions differently? That is to say, every time he's late, you may be thinking something along the lines of, this is insulting, this is disrespectful, why would someone who cares about me treat me like this? All of that is understandable, but it's probably fair to say that he's not trying to insult you and that his lateness is not a reflection of the care he has for you, at least in his mind. Changing the narrative around the action may take the temperature down a little bit. That doesn't mean it won't be annoying, but it may be helpful to think, this is something my partner does. I don't like it. I wish he didn't, but he's not intentionally trying to waste my time. This is also not to say that all of this is on you. It's not. He's the late one. So it will also be helpful to say to him, This is an ongoing conflict between the two of us. I accept that this is the way you are. I hope you accept that this is the way I am. What can we do to solve it so that it doesn't continue to impact our relationship? One solution might be for him to set his appointments with you earlier so that he inadvertently shows up on time. He has to acknowledge that this is something that's creating an unnecessary roadblock in your relationship, and that together you have the power to fix it.
House passes bill to limit trades by sitting lawmakers. The House narrowly passed a bill to add new restrictions on lawmakers trading stocks after a partisan dispute resulted in a narrower proposal that stopped short of an outright ban. The bill passed 232 to 198 on Wednesday, with only 13 Democrats joining Republicans in support. It is unclear when or if it will be taken up in the Senate. The measure prevents lawmakers, their spouses, and dependent children from buying new stocks of publicly traded companies while serving in Congress, which adds a new restriction on a highly controversial practice. Under the legislation, lawmakers can still buy private stocks, keep stocks they already owned prior to entering Congress, and maintain certain investment funds. Selling stock would require a 7 to 14-day advance notice. If the new rules are violated, the lawmaker would have to pay a fee of $2,000 or 10% of the value of the transaction, whichever is greater, and forfeit the profit from the trade. In the days leading up to the vote, a separate voter ID measure that would also add new restrictions on mail-in voting was added to the bill, further complicating the push to pass the bill. While the bill, led by Brian Steele, GOP chairman of the House Administration Committee, adds more constraints on lawmaker stock trading than what exists under the current law, most Democrats opposed it, saying it did not go far enough to end the practice, and they disapproved of the Republican decision to attach changes to voting measures to the legislation. House Republicans are pushing a voter suppression bill that will upend mail-in voting and throw the elections into chaos, and are trying to trick members into supporting it by linking it to a partial stock trading ban that falls short of the full congressional stock trading ban that the American people want, said Democratic Representative Seth Mazinger, who co-led a bipartisan bill to ban stock trading that is stalled. Stiles said on Monday that the legislation is critical to restoring public trust in this institution. I believe it is time we just stop allowing members to buy new stock. Doing so removes the appearance of impropriety altogether. Americans should be confident that lawmakers are working for them, not for their stock portfolios. GOP Rep. Chip Roy, who has for years pushed for a ban on lawmaker stock trading, called Wednesday's vote a major step towards holding members accountable and restoring trust in government. For too long, Americans have watched politicians enrich themselves while asking the public to trust them. That has to end. I fought since my first term in Congress to ban congressional stock trading because serving in Congress should never be a path to personal profit, Roy said. The question of whether lawmakers should be allowed to trade stocks has sparked contentious debate in the halls of Congress for years. At one point last year, there was a glimmer of hope that permanently banning lawmaker stock trading in its entirety would become law with strong bipartisan support. A bipartisan bill was introduced in September 2025, and in December 2025, GOP Representative Anna Paulina Luna tried to circumvent House GOP leadership to bring a bill banning lawmakers' stock trading to the floor. Initial support for the goal of restricting lawmakers' stock trading from President Donald Trump House Speaker Mike Johnson and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries also generated fresh momentum. Missouri Republican Josh Hawley even voted with Democrats in July 2025 to advance a bill to ban lawmakers from stock trading over the opposition of other Republicans on the panel and drawing the ire of Trump about whether the ban should include executive branch. But then proposals started to diverge and talks began to stall. Some Democrats pushed to expand the effort to include banning the president, vice president, and their spouses from trading stocks as well, losing Republican support in the process. Lawmaker stock trading has not been reformed since the Stock Act was passed in 2012. That bill created requirements for lawmakers to disclose their stock trades, but has done little to curb the practice. Polls have consistently found widespread support for banning members of Congress from trading stocks. The issue has received national attention and alarmed nonpartisan ethics experts about whether lawmakers are using their positions of power for personal enrichment. CNN has reported on instances where senator stock purchases or sales involved companies with industries overseen by the committees they serve on, as well as how lawmakers' stock trading spiked in the days around President Trump's trade war announcements. Under current law, lawmakers, their spouses, and children are permitted to make trades, but they are mandated to report any activity done on their behalf within 45 days. They are only required to disclose a monetary value range for trades. Ahead of the vote, GOP Representative Thomas Massie said he would support the legislation but offered a warning. "I don't think it's going to solve problems up here, but I'll vote for it," Massie said on Tuesday.
Up in smoke. Exposure to haze from wildfires poses risk of serious health issues. Massive wildfires around the world blanketed millions of people under pungent haze caused by smoke-carrying noxious gases and particulate matter that pose health risks. More toxic than normal air pollution, wildfire smoke can linger in the air for weeks and travel thousands of miles. Wildfires can burn not only vegetation, but also vehicles and buildings and their contents. Along with particles of soil and biological materials, wildfire smoke often contains traces of chemicals, metals, plastics, and other synthetic materials. Laboratory experiments found wildfire smoke causes more inflammation and tissue damage than air pollution, said Kent Pickerton, co-director of the Center for Health and Environment at the University of California, Davis. Studies linked wildfire smoke with higher rates of heart attacks, strokes, and cardiac arrests, increases in emergency room visits for asthma, weakened immune defenses, and poorer survival rates after surgery. A 2023 study in Maryland identified a spike in heart and lung illnesses associated with wildfire smoke originating up to 2,100 miles away. Wildfire smoke also was linked with eye and skin problems. Wildfire smoke exposure in pregnancy was associated with miscarriage, low birth weight, and preterm delivery. A California study found a link between exposure and cellular damage in first and second trimester placentas. A separate study found exposure during the third trimester may raise the risk of an autism diagnosis. The effects can persist for years. After Australia's 2014 Hazelwood coal mine fire, heart disease rates remained elevated for 2.5 years and respiratory illnesses for 5 years. A 2026 U.S. study linked wildfire smoke exposure with elevated risks for lung, colorectal, breast, bladder, and blood cancer, with the risks increasing along with the level of pollution from the fires. Exposure to the 2018 Camp Fire in California was linked to changes in cognition and brain activity 6 to 12 months later, California researchers found. Several studies linked longer-term wildfire smoke exposure to higher risks for dementia. Data from California also show an increase in fungal infections in the months following wildfire smoke exposure, likely due to spores in the smoke. The bad news is there's no safe level of inhaled particles from wildfire smoke, said the public health sciences at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. The higher the exposure, the worse the risks, and even at levels below the national safety standards, these particles can make people sick. Any amount of inhaled particles would trigger inflammatory responses in the body. Children, the elderly, and people with chronic illnesses are most vulnerable. Some effects of exposure, such as sore throats, excessive phlegm, coughing, headaches, and brain fog, can appear immediately and persist long after the smoke plume is gone. What can help? Experts advise wearing N95 masks when wildfire smoke is present and limiting outdoor activities, especially strenuous sports. The longer you are outside and the harder you breathe, the more pollution you inhale. Experts also recommend using indoor air purifiers that can trap particles smaller than 2.5 microns. Online, UC Davis offers simple instructions to build an air purifier, and the Environmental Protection Agency offers guidance for reducing exposure. Are the indoors safe? On average, the concentration of wildfire pollutants indoors is about half of what it is outdoors. If a building is poorly sealed, the concentration may be up to 70% of what it is outside. Old buildings may expose people to greater amounts of pollution through drafty windows and doors. The EPA advises that during wildfire smoke events, people avoid indoor activities that put more fine particles into the air, such as smoking cigarettes, frying or broiling food, burning candles or incense, and vacuuming without a HEPA filter. What isn't known? More frequent wildfires likely linked to climate change mean people will be exposed more often. Researchers are looking into the long-term effects of wildfire smoke particles in water supplies, on crops or ingested by livestock, urban wildfire smoke, exposure in utero, and whether wildfire smoke amplifies the adverse effects of extremely hot weather. Nutrients carried in wildfire smoke may contribute to downwind algal blooms, which has implications for drinking water reservoirs and lake ecology, researchers warn.
OpenAI says AI models went rogue during testing. OpenAI says some of its experimental AI models left a test environment with no human direction and hacked its way onto a different company's real production systems while trying to cheat on the cybersecurity test. It's one of the first publicly disclosed examples of an AI system autonomously breaching its testing environment and reaching a real external system. The Agentic attack scenario the AI and cybersecurity industry has been warning will happen. It's like an engineered virus escaping a biocontainment lab and turning up inside a neighboring facility's systems. We consider this incident to be an unprecedented cyber incident involving state-of-the-art cyber capabilities and are responding accordingly. We are sharing preliminary findings at this stage to help defenders understand what happened and to help calibrate on what models are now capable of. The ChatGPT maker said the breach happened while it was internally testing how good some of its new models are at hacking. The models were in a sealed-off test environment known as a sandbox so that its normal safety restrictions could be turned off. But OpenAI said the AI agents broke out of the sandbox using a previously unknown security flaw and worked their way across OpenAI's internal systems until they managed to gain internet access, something they weren't supposed to have. Once online, the model reasoned that Hugging Face, a well-known company that hosts thousands of open-source AI models and datasets, likely had the answer to OpenAI's test. It then broke into Hugging Face's production servers and pulled out the information it needed to solve the exercise. Hugging Face have noticed the breach itself before it knew it was an OpenAI test, announcing last week that they had detected an intrusion by an autonomous AI agent system and even reporting the incident to law enforcement. OpenAI's security team separately noticed the unusual activity internally, and the two companies connected. They both now say they are working together to solve the security flaws the model exploited. Hugging Face co-founder and CEO Clam Delane framed the incident as evidence AI safety can't be handled by one company working alone, and it needs to be tackled openly and collaboratively. This is day one for cybersecurity. In the age of agents, we're all learning that secrecy is not the answer, and that all defenders, not just a few selected ones, everywhere need more powerful tools without restrictions, especially open ones, he said on a post X. OpenAI's disclosure that its advanced models were responsible for the breach, despite having placed them in what it described as highly isolated environments, will likely intensify disquiet over the power and risk of frontier models.
And our MyView article is written by Sister Louise Elf from the St. Francis of Newman Communities, and she meditates on touch. Touch can come in different forms. Many years ago, working in a local Catholic parish, I met a couple who, even after 60-plus years of marriage, were not ashamed to publicly display their affection for one another by always holding hands. When the wife died, the husband was devastated. As he entered the church one Sunday, he came to me and said, "Sister, I like coming to Mass because it's the only day of the week everyone ever touches me." The embrace from fellow parishioners and the meaningful touch at the sign of peace softened his daily ache. Physical touch is one of the most fundamental human needs, and he felt its loss profoundly. Can we live without touch? I suppose it is possible, but at what price? If we can't physically touch, isn't it possible to touch in other ways? While COVID seemed to hit the pause button on physical touching, one can forget the creative ways. Who can forget the creative ways people tried to touch one another? People stood outside of nursing homes with their hands on the glass, sending love through the window. We saw loved ones throwing kisses from afar. Graduates received congratulations with drive-by signs, and Zoom calls replaced family gatherings. But unfortunately, I feel like we are still living under the shadow of those painful months. While we may have reclaimed the joy of touching our loved ones, there is sometimes hesitation when it comes to physically touching one another. We often pull out the hand sanitizer to be extra safe. But if we are selective in our physical touching, I think we need to be more creative and lavish in other ways. In the 70s, Diana Ross wrote a song challenging us with the lyrics, "Reach out and touch somebody's hand, make this world a better place, if you can. If you don't want to touch their hand, touch them with the letter you sent, with your voice on the phone, or with the kindness in your words." My faith is based on a God of touch. God touched the world by sending his son Jesus. Jesus touched others through miracles, teachings, and his gift of himself at the Last Supper. It is through Jesus' example that I learn the many ways I can effectively touch others. When I travel through Williamsville, I often see a man with a big sign, "Free hugs." He enthusiastically tries to make eye contact with drivers as they whiz down Main Street. If possible, I reciprocate by honking my horn and waving back. For a brief moment, our eyes connect, and we have touched one another. I am in contact with a person who is on death row now. I have never met him, but he touches me with his monthly phone calls, and I reciprocate with my letters. Despite the miles, our friendship brings me great joy. He made a card for me that says, "Just thinking of you." I place it where I can see it every day, and then send up a quick prayer hoping that he will feel my touch. We know the power of touch and the pain of living without it. The gentleman who lost his wife also felt like he had lost his connection with people. I would hope that, as his grief lessens, the touch of her hand will be replaced by touches of friendship and kindness. My wish is that all of us will continue to touch and be touched, so that we, as Ross sings, make this world a better place if we can.
I think that's a great article to take to heart.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Because there is not enough touch. I know sometimes a hug from a friend really feels good and hits the spot.
Yes, yes,
So
it does.
let's take that, and even if you just do something nice for somebody or hug them or give them a smile,
Yeah.
that means a lot.
Or say hello when you pass someone on the street.
Right, exactly.
You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, July 23rd. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak, and thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,